Before I introduce Quo Vadis, I want to recapitulate briefly the content of the previous lecture. For Italians, Italian history and Italian culture begin with the history of Rome, the foundation of the city of Rome, which the myth places in the year 753, on April 21st, to be more precise. Of course, it is a legend, but foundational myths tend to choose one momentous event, imaginary event, as the beginning of a particular history. Romulus, the first king, allegedly was the first of 7 kings, a period that lasted about 250 years, during which Rome was one of many little states, cities, entities that populated the area of central Italy. Definitely not a major player in Italian history, up to the point when the last king is dethroned and the power passes in the hands of the Senate. The Senate is the assembly of representatives from the most important and the most powerful families in Rome, and also of other notable individuals, such as generals, for instance. The Senate dethrones the king and takes over the control of the state. In order to prevent anybody from becoming too powerful and taking over as a dictator, they decide to invent a new system where, with 2 leaders, 2 consuls that are elected directly by the state and who stay in power only for 1 year so that they can check each other out, basically. They call the new form of state res publica, republic, common thing, common good, and they invent the form of the modern state that we are to this very day still following, in a sense. Among other things, there are new symbols, and the symbol of the Roman Republic is the bundle of sticks, which indicates unity. One stick by itself can be broken, but a bundle of sticks altogether are unbreakable. The monogram SPQR means the Senate and the people of the Romans, Senatus Populusque Romanorum. Interestingly enough, there are still countries, or at least one country in the world, that uses the symbol of the bundle. The motto of the United States, E pluribus unum, in Latin, means from many one, and symbolizes strength that comes from unity. A nation, a country, is only as strong as its institutions. A state can rely on violence, on military power, on fear in order to keep order and control, but it is only the institutions that can guarantee a future for the people and for the state itself. And probably no institution is more important than the justice system, the laws, the fact that there are regulations in place that govern the relationships between individuals, between groups of people, and between the state itself and the citizens. In the United States, we are particularly proud of the Constitution that puts limits on the power of the state against the individual. In Rome, these principles were established in the so-called 12 tablets, which contained the principles, the constitutional principles, we can say, of the Roman state. Roman laws and basic concepts are still the foundation of the justice system, even in this country. If you follow the Supreme Court decisions at all, you must have heard about habeas corpus or stare decisis, which are all concepts that were first invented and applied by the Romans. Probably the most important concept of Roman law is the concept of citizenship. Roman citizens could not be arrested and put in jail without a reason. There had to be some kind of legitimate process for this kind of act. I said at the beginning of the lecture that this was going to be a brief summary of what I had talked about previously, but I noticed that I added more material and I expanded on several topics. So let me go back to the timeline of Rome, and we are focusing now on the Republican period. During the monarchy, from 750 to 500, Rome was a negligible little entity. But as soon as it gave itself some very strong institutions, it began to expand, first locally, and then it gained more and more and more power, to the point where the expansion became incredibly fast. Around the year 300, Rome conquered several large portions of territories that were held by different populations and expanded first into Italy and then into Europe. These were military campaigns that first brought Spain under the control of Rome, and then progressively areas such as Greece and the beginning of the takeover of Northern Africa in what is now Tunisia. Wealth and power breed corruption, not surprisingly. So the traditional values of the Roman Republic, which was honesty, probity, valor, sacrifice for the common good, are abandoned, and the Senate in particular become corrupt to the core. I chose the year 44 symbolically because it is the year of the assassination of Caesar. Caesar was only a symptom of the problem. The Senate had lost respect and was no longer believable in the eyes of the population, and the population trusted this idea of a dictator, of somebody who would clean things up. I don't want to make references to our present history right now, but there are some similarities that are quite attractive. So Julius Caesar decrees in practice the collapse of the old system. He will not become emperor because he's assassinated, but about 15 years later, his adopted son, Octavianus, becomes the first emperor of Rome. The empire expands further, and let's go quickly through the years until we get to the year 1 of the Common Era, which by tradition has been established as the year of the birth of Jesus. For those who believe in the Gospels, Jesus started preaching when he was 30 years old, and 3 years later, at age 33, he was dead. What is remarkable is that in a matter of 20 years after the alleged death of Christ, Christianity had already become an incredibly powerful presence in the Roman Empire. In the film Quo Vadis, we see the importance and the relevance of this presence, and the way that Nero deals with this new reality that the emperor has to confront. And we are about the year 55-60 of the Common Era. How and why this religious movement became so widespread and so successful in such a short period of time are questions that scholars have been trying to answer for 20 centuries, filling up millions, literally millions of pages. For the faithful, the answer is very simple. This is the true faith, therefore it couldn't be otherwise. But there are other reasons that have been brought up to explain, in a way, the phenomenon that Rome witnessed, the Rome and then the rest of the Western world. The process of moving from the Republic to the empire and replacing the Senate as the center of power with one single figure, the emperor, in a way mirrors a movement away from a polytheistic religion, a religion with many gods, toward a monotheistic religion, the religion with one God. Now, it is also very important to notice that this trend converges into the figure of the emperor, where the emperor himself is both the secular ruler but is the representation of God, if not God himself. So there are cultural trends that are developing in the Roman world that are converging, and they bring about this notion of Unitarian power. The emperor represents Unitarian power. Now, Christianity at the time was one of many religious movements, monotheistic religious movements that had penetrated Roman society. It wasn't the only one. Christianity comes from Judaism, which is a monotheistic religion that was at least 1,000 years old. But before and parallel to that, there was Zoroastrianism in Persia, in the East. From the East comes the religion of the sun god. His name is Mithras, the Sol Invictus, the undefeated sun. Now, Mithras precedes the Christian cult by several centuries, and what is peculiar about it is that his birthday was celebrated on December 25th, and only later in the development of Christianity did the faithful choose December 25th as the traditional date of birth of Jesus. So regardless of the various historical reasons, one fact remains, and is that Rome becomes the center of this new religion, and it becomes a center of power for this new religion that associates itself with the secular power. At the beginning, we see with Nero, the Christians are persecuted, but it's only a matter of time and not very long in terms of the history of the Western world that Christianity becomes one of the foundations of the Western civilization.